Sylvia stood in front of her full-length mirror, smoothing down the burgundy dress she'd bought specifically for this night. The fabric hugged her curves perfectly, and the color complemented her dark skin beautifully. She'd spent the last 2 hours getting ready. Hair styled in elegant curls, makeup flawless, nails freshly done at the salon in Gangnam. Tonight was going to be the night. She could feel it in her bones. Min-Jun had been acting strange for the past 3 weeks. Secretive phone calls, mysterious errands, that nervous energy that men get when they're planning something big. Add to that the fact that he'd made reservations at their special restaurant, the same upscale Hanok-style venue in Gangnam where they'd had every Valentine's Day dinner for the past 2 years, and Sylvia was convinced. He was going to propose. Her phone buzzed on the dresser. A text from Sandra, her best friend. Sandra, girl, have fun tonight. But remember what I said. Don't get your hopes up too high. You know how Korean men can be about marriage, especially with foreign women. Sylvia frowned at the message. Sandra had been saying things like this a lot lately. Little comments about Korean men not being serious about black women, warnings about getting too invested, suggestions that maybe Sylvia should consider dating other people, just to keep her options open. It had started to annoy her, if she was being honest. Sandra didn't know Min-Jun like she did. They'd been together for 2 years. He'd introduced her to his friends, taken her on trips to Jeju Island and Busan, spent holidays with her when she couldn't afford to fly home to the States. That meant something. She typed back quickly. Thanks, babe. But I'm not worried. Min-Jun loves me. I'll call you tomorrow and tell you all about it. Setting her phone down, Sylvia grabbed her clutch and took one last look in the mirror. At 28, she'd never felt more ready for this next step. She'd moved to Seoul 3 years ago to teach English, and meeting Min-Jun had made this foreign city feel like home. The February air was crisp and cold when she stepped out of her small apartment in Itaewon. She'd called a taxi rather than taking the subway. Tonight was special, and she wanted to arrive looking perfect, not wind-blown and cold from the walk to the station. As the taxi wound through Seoul's glittering streets, Sylvia let herself daydream. Would he get down on one knee in front of everyone? Would the ring be traditional or modern? They'd talked about marriage before, in that casual way couples do. Where they'd live, how many kids they wanted, what they'd name them. The taxi pulled up in front of Hanok House, the restaurant's elegant traditional Korean architecture standing out among the modern buildings of Gangnam. Soft light glowed from the paper windows, and Sylvia could see the shapes of couples inside, celebrating the most romantic night of the year. She paid the driver and stepped out, her heels clicking on the pavement. Her heart was racing now. This was it. Sylvia pushed through the heavy wooden door, immediately enveloped by warmth and the soft murmur of conversation. The hostess smiled at her in recognition. They'd been here enough times that the staff knew them. "Good evening, Miss Sylvia," the hostess said in accented English. "Your party is already here. Follow me, please." Already here. Min-Jun usually ran late. Maybe he was early because he was nervous about the proposal. The thought made Sylvia smile as she followed the hostess through the restaurant. They wound past couples sharing intimate dinners, past the private rooms where groups celebrated, toward the back where the most romantic tables overlooked a small traditional garden lit by lanterns. The hostess stopped at a corner table, and Sylvia's smile froze on her face. Min-Jun was there, just as she'd expected. He looked handsome in a dark suit, his hair styled perfectly. But he wasn't alone. Sitting across from him, laughing at something he'd just said, her hand resting on top of his on the table, was Sandra. Sylvia's best friend Sandra. The same Sandra who'd just texted her. The same Sandra who'd been warning her about Korean men. The same Sandra who was now looking at Min-Jun with an expression that Sylvia knew all too well, because it was the same way Sylvia looked at him. For a moment, Sylvia couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what her eyes were seeing. The hostess, oblivious to the tension, gestured toward the table. "Here you are. What the hell is this? Hey everyone. Welcome back to K-Whisper, your go-to channel for all things Afro-Korean romance, drama, and real talk. If you're new here, welcome to the family. I'm so glad you found us. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. You guys are the real MVPs. Before we dive into today's story, I need to ask you all for a huge favor. We are so close to hitting 3,000 subscribers, fam. Can you believe it? We started this channel to tell stories that represent US, Black women navigating love, heartbreak, and life in Korea. And the support has been absolutely incredible. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button right now. It's free, it takes 2 seconds, and it helps this channel grow so we can keep bringing you the content you love. Let's get to 3K together. And while you're at it, smash that like button, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and share this video with anyone who loves a good romance drama story. Alright, now that we've got that out of the way, let me tell you about today's story. The words exploded from Sylvia's throat before she could stop them. Her voice cut through the gentle ambience of the restaurant like a knife. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Min-Jun and Sandra's heads snapped toward her in unison. Min-Jun's face went pale, but Sandra's expression was something else entirely. Shock, yes, but underneath it was something that looked almost like satisfaction. Sylvia, Min-Jun started, pulling his hand away from Sandra's. Don't you dare Sylvia me. Her voice was shaking now, tears already burning in her eyes. What are you doing here with her? This is our restaurant, our table, our Valentine's Day. She was dimly aware of phones being pulled out around her, of the subtle movements of people angling their cameras to capture the scene. But she couldn't stop. The shock was giving way to a tidal wave of hurt and rage. How dare you? Sylvia's voice cracked. I thought you were going to propose tonight. I thought. She couldn't finish the sentence. Her legs suddenly felt weak, and she stumbled, catching herself on a nearby chair. The room was spinning. Min-Jun stood up, his jaw tight. But instead of the guilt or remorse she expected to see, his face was set in cold irritation. Sylvia, you're embarrassing yourself, he said, his voice low but cutting. This is my reservation. I can bring whoever I want. The words hit her like a physical blow. Around them she could hear the whispers starting. See, the phone's definitely recording now. Someone giggled. But I don't understand, Sylvia stammered, hating how pathetic she sounded. We're together. We're supposed to be here together tonight. Sandra finally spoke, her voice quiet but clear enough for everyone nearby to hear. Sylvia, maybe you should go. The betrayal of hearing those words from her best friend's mouth, the friend who'd helped her through her first winter in Seoul, who'd held her when she was homesick, who she'd trusted with everything, was somehow worse than seeing Min-Jun with her. How could you? Sylvia whispered, looking between them. Both of you. How could you do this to me? Min-Jun's expression hardened. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a few bills and tossed them on the table. Then he turned to Sandra, completely ignoring Sylvia. Let's go, he said to Sandra, his voice gentle in a way he used to use with Sylvia. This place is ruined now anyway. Sandra hesitated for just a moment, and Sylvia saw something flash across her face. Guilt? Regret. But then it was gone, replaced by a cold mask. She picked up her purse and stood. They walked past Sylvia like she wasn't even there. Min-Jun's shoulder brushed hers, and she stumbled again, this time falling to her knees on the restaurant floor. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable, streaming down her face and ruining her carefully applied makeup. She could hear the clicks of camera phones, the whispers, someone's nervous laugh. Miss, please, the hostess was saying, trying to help her up. Please, you must go. You're disturbing the other guests. Disturbing the other guests. She was the disturbance. Not Min-Jun, who'd brought another woman to their special place. Not Sandra, who'd betrayed their friendship. Somehow Sylvia got to her feet. Somehow she made it to the door. And somehow she found herself outside in the freezing February night, mascara streaming down her face. Her carefully chosen dress suddenly feeling like a costume for a play she hadn't known was a tragedy. Behind her, through the window, she could see the restaurant returning to normal. The other couples going back to their romantic dinners. The hostess cleaning up the scene of her humiliation. And walking away down the street, Min-Jun's arm wrapped around Sandra's waist, were the two people she'd trusted most in the world. Sylvia's phone buzzed in her clutch. Through blurred vision, she saw notifications popping up on her screen. Someone had already posted the video. Sylvia didn't remember getting into the taxi. She didn't remember giving the driver Min-Jun's address. But somehow, 40 minutes later, she found herself standing outside his apartment building in Gangnam, shivering in her thin dress, her face swollen from crying. The logical part of her brain was screaming at her to go home, to leave it alone, to preserve whatever dignity she had left. But the other part, the part that was desperate for answers, for some explanation that would make this nightmare make sense, pushed her forward. She still had her key to his place. He'd given it to her 6 months ago, saying it was more convenient when she stayed over. At the time, she'd thought it meant they were getting serious, moving toward something permanent. Now, as she rode the elevator up to the 15th floor, she wondered if anything in their relationship had been real. The elevator dinged and the doors slid open. Sylvia walked down the familiar hallway on shaking legs. She'd walked this path dozens of times, usually with butterflies of excitement in her stomach. Now she just felt nauseous. She reached apartment 1507 and stood there for a moment, her key in her trembling hand. Part of her didn't want to know what was on the other side of that door. But she'd come this far. The key slid into the lock with a soft click. The apartment was dark except for a soft glow coming from down the hallway, from the bedroom. And even before she heard the sounds, Sylvia knew. Some deep, primal part of her already knew what she was about to find. But knowing and seeing are two very different things. She walked down the hallway like a woman in a dream, her heels silent on the plush carpet. The bedroom door was half open, and through it she could hear them. Sandra's laugh, breathy and intimate. Min-Jun's low voice, speaking in Korean. And then, other sounds. Sounds that made Sylvia's stomach turn. She pushed the door open. They were on the bed. Min-Jun's bed, where Sylvia had slept countless nights. The sheets were tangled around them, clothes scattered on the floor. Sandra's dress, a red dress that Sylvia recognized because she'd helped Sandra pick it out last month, was draped over the chair. For a moment they didn't notice her. They were too wrapped up in each other. And Sylvia stood there, frozen, watching the two people she'd loved most in the world betray her in the most intimate way possible. Then Sandra's eyes opened and met Sylvia's over Min-Jun's shoulder. Sylvia expected shock. She expected Sandra to scramble away, to cover herself, to show some shame. Instead, Sandra smiled. It wasn't a big smile. Just a small, satisfied curve of her lips. And then she whispered something to Min-Jun, who turned his head and saw Sylvia standing in the doorway. Jesus Christ, Sylvia! Min-Jun jumped up, grabbing a sheet. What the hell are you doing here? What am I? Sylvia couldn't even finish the sentence. Her voice came out as a strangled sob. I have a key. This is where I thought. Sandra sat up slowly, making no move to cover herself, completely unbothered by Sylvia's presence. That casual confidence, that lack of shame, was somehow more devastating than anything else. You thought wrong, Sandra said, her voice calm and cold. About a lot of things, apparently. How long? Sylvia heard herself ask. How long has this been going on? Min-Jun and Sandra exchanged a look. An intimate look, full of shared secrets. Does it matter? Min-Jun said, pulling on his pants. Yes, it matters. Sylvia screamed. You're my boyfriend. She's my best friend. Of course it matters. Sandra laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was like glass breaking. She stood up, wrapping herself in Min-Jun's robe with the casual familiarity of someone who'd done it many times before. Ex-boyfriend, Sandra corrected, walking toward Sylvia. Let's be real here. And as for being your best friend. She paused, tilting her head. He was mine from the beginning, Sylvia. You were just practice. The words hit like a slap. What? Did you really think a man like Min-Jun would end up with someone like you? Sandra's eyes were cold now, all pretense of friendship gone. I introduced you two at that party, remember? I set the whole thing up. I just needed to see if he could handle dating a black woman before I made my move. And you know what? You made it so easy. Sylvia felt like she couldn't breathe. You set us up so you could. Sandra's feed had become a highlight reel of the life that should have been Sylvia's. Couple photos at trendy cafes in Gangnam. Weekend trips to Jeju Island. Designer shopping bags from luxury boutiques in Cheongdam-dong. And always Min-Jun by her side, looking at Sandra the way he used to look at Sylvia. The captions were even worse. My king treating me right. When he surprises you with Chanel. Date night at the place where it all began. That last one had been posted exactly 1 week ago, with a photo of them at Hanok House, the same restaurant where Sylvia's world had collapsed. Sandra was wearing a new dress, diamonds sparkling at her throat, Min-Jun's arm possessively around her waist. The comments were full of heart emojis and congratulations. Nobody seemed to remember or care that this relationship had been built on betrayal. Sylvia was staring at that photo for the 100th time, tears sliding down her cheeks, when her phone buzzed with a new notification. Sandra had posted something new. With trembling fingers, Sylvia clicked on it. The photo showed Sandra standing next to a sleek black Genesis GV80, the exact car Min-Jun had promised to buy Sylvia for her birthday. They'd gone to the dealership together, picked out the color, talked about all the road trips they'd take. He'd said he was saving up for it, that it would be hers by summer. That had been 4 months ago. And now there was Sandra, holding up the keys, Min-Jun kissing her cheek. The caption read, "Early birthday present from my baby. Dreams really do come true when you're with the right person." Sylvia dropped her phone like it had burned her. He'd bought Sandra the car. The exact car he'd promised her. Down to the color. Something inside Sylvia cracked. She grabbed her laptop and started digging through her old messages with Sandra, screenshots she'd saved, anything that could help her make sense of this nightmare. And that's when she found it. Buried in her cloud storage was a screenshot from 8 months ago, before Sandra had started openly dating Min-Jun, before the warnings about Korean men, before everything fell apart. It was from a group chat Sylvia had been removed from after the Valentine's Day incident. But she'd taken a screenshot of one particular exchange because it had seemed funny at the time. Sandra. Girl, your man is fine. If you ever get tired of him. Sylvia. Hands off. He's mine. Sandra. I'm just saying if you ever break up, send him my way. At the time, Sylvia had thought it was just friendly teasing. Now, reading it again, she could see it for what it really was. A confession hiding in plain sight. But there was more. Scrolling through her cloud storage, Sylvia found old screenshots from Sandra's Instagram stories, the ones that disappeared after 24 hours. Posts from 7-8 months ago. Cryptic quotes like, "Sometimes you have to play the long game to get what you want. The best revenge is success." And taking what they thought was theirs. If you want something, don't wait for permission. Take it. Sylvia had seen these posts in real time but never connected them to herself. She'd thought Sandra was talking about her career, or some other situation. Now she understood. Sandra had been bragging about stealing Min-Jun in real time, and Sylvia had been too naive to see it. The realization made her feel sick. How could she have been so blind? Her phone buzzed again. Another Instagram notification. Sandra had posted a video to her story. Sylvia knew she shouldn't watch it. Knew it would only hurt more. But she couldn't stop herself. The video showed Sandra in the driver's seat of the new car, Min-Jun in the passenger seat. They were laughing about something, and then Min-Jun leaned over and kissed her. The kind of kiss that was definitely meant for an audience. "Taking my new baby for a spin with my real baby," the caption read. The emphasis on real felt like a targeted attack. Because it probably was. Sylvia threw her phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor, the screen cracking. "I hate you," she screamed at her empty apartment, at Sandra's perfect life, at her own stupidity for trusting them. "I hate both of you." But screaming didn't help. Nothing helped. She sank to the floor, her back against the bed, and let the despair wash over her. This was her life now. Watching from the sidelines as Sandra lived out every promise Min-Jun had made to her. Car, the trips, the jewelry, the Instagram-perfect relationship. Everything Sylvia had dreamed of, handed to the woman who'd betrayed her. 3 days later, Sylvia found herself at Han River Park at sunset. She wasn't sure why she'd come. Maybe because it was free, maybe because she needed to get out of her apartment before she lost her mind completely, maybe because some part of her remembered when Seoul had felt like an adventure instead of a prison. She sat on a bench overlooking the water, watching couples take selfies and families have picnics. The spring air was finally warming up, cherry blossoms starting to bloom. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it just reminded her of everything she'd lost. Beautiful evening, isn't it? Sylvia looked up to find an elderly Korean woman standing beside her bench. She was probably in her 70s, elegantly dressed in a pastel hanbok, her silver hair pulled back neatly. "Yes," Sylvia replied quietly, wiping at her eyes. "Very beautiful. May I sit?" the woman asked in careful English. Sylvia nodded, scooting over to make room. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Then the older woman spoke again. "You look like someone who's lost something important." Sylvia let out a bitter laugh. "Is it that obvious?" "I've worn that expression myself," the woman said gently. "Many years ago. A man and a friend," Sylvia said. "And my job. And my dignity." She didn't know why she was telling this stranger her problems, but somehow it felt easier than talking to people who knew her story. The woman nodded thoughtfully. "Let me tell you something about Seoul. This city. It can be very cruel to those who show weakness. But it can also be very kind to those who show strength. I don't feel very strong right now." "No one does when they're at the bottom," the woman said. "I was where you are once. Different circumstances but the same pain. My husband left me for a younger woman. Took our business, our home, everything. I was 45 years old with nothing." Sylvia looked at her in surprise. The woman carried herself with such grace and confidence. It was hard to imagine her broken and desperate. "What did you do?" Sylvia asked. "I rebuilt," the woman said simply. "But first I had to stop watching him live the life we were supposed to have together. I had to stop comparing my rock bottom to his success. And I had to decide, would I let this destroy me, or would I let it reshape me into something stronger? How do you just stop caring? You don't stop caring. You redirect the energy. All that anger, that pain, that betrayal, it's fuel. You can use it to burn yourself down, or you can use it to forge something new." The woman turned to look at Sylvia directly. "In Seoul, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming so successful, so happy, so genuinely fulfilled that your past becomes irrelevant." Sylvia felt tears welling up again. "I don't even know where to start." "Start small," the woman said. "Get up tomorrow. Eat a proper meal. Take a shower. Apply for one job. Then do it again the next day. And the next. Small steps toward being the person you want to be, not the person they made you feel like you were." "What if I can't?" "Then you do it anyway." The woman stood up, smoothing down her hanbok. "I didn't think I could either. But 30 years later, I own 3 successful restaurants. Have a family who loves me. And that man who left me. I don't even remember his face anymore." She smiled. "You're young. You're in one of the most exciting cities in the world. You have time to become whoever you want to be. Don't waste it mourning people who never deserved you in the first place." Before Sylvia could respond, the woman bowed slightly and walked away, disappearing into the evening crowd. Sylvia sat there for a long time after she left, watching the sun finally dip below the horizon. Then she picked up her cracked phone and opened her notes app. She started a new list. Things to do tomorrow. It was a small list. Pathetic, really, compared to Sandra's luxury car and designer lifestyle. But it was a start. And maybe, just maybe, that elderly woman was right. Maybe this didn't have to be the end of her story. Maybe it could be the beginning of something better. Sylvia stood up from the bench, took one last look at the river, and started walking home. For the first time in 2 months, she wasn't thinking about Min-Jun or Sandra. She was thinking about herself. And tomorrow, she would take the first step toward rebuilding her life. 4 months after Valentine's Day. Sylvia adjusted her workout leggings and stared at herself in the mirror of her apartment. She barely recognized the woman looking back at her. Not because she looked worse, actually, quite the opposite. Over the past 2 months, following her conversation with the elderly woman at Han River, Sylvia had slowly started putting herself back together. It hadn't been easy. There were still days when she couldn't get out of bed. Days when she'd catch herself checking Sandra's Instagram before remembering she'd deleted the app. Days when she'd see a couple that looked like her and Min-Jun used to, and the wound would feel fresh all over again. But there were also good days now. Days when she forgot to think about them at all. She'd found a new job, not teaching this time, but working as a coordinator at an international marketing firm in Gangnam. The pay was better, the hours were flexible, and best of all, nobody there knew about the Valentine's Day video. It had finally stopped circulating, buried under newer scandals and dramas. And 2 weeks ago, she'd done something she never thought she'd have the courage to do. She'd joined a gym. Not just any gym, a high-end fitness center in Gangnam that she definitely couldn't afford on her old teacher's salary. But with her new job, she'd decided to invest in herself. The old Sylvia would have saved every penny. The new Sylvia understood that she was worth investing in. Now, standing in front of the mirror in her new workout clothes, Sylvia felt not happy exactly. Not yet. But something close to hopeful. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mom in the States. "Mom, how are you doing, baby? Still thinking about coming home for a visit?" Sylvia smiled. Her mother had been her rock through all of this, despite being thousands of miles away. She'd wanted Sylvia to come home immediately after the breakup, but Sylvia had refused. Running away felt like letting them win. "Sylvia, doing better, Mom. Just heading to the gym. Maybe I'll visit this summer. Miss you." She grabbed her gym bag and headed out. The gym was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seoul skyline, state-of-the-art equipment, and a clientele that looked like they'd walked off a kdrama set. Sylvia had been intimidated the first few times, but she was getting used to it. She scanned her membership card and headed to the women's locker room to stash her bag. It was early evening, the gym's busiest time, and already the floor was filling up with people. Sylvia started with the treadmill, putting in her earbuds and settling into a steady rhythm. This was her favorite part. The mindless motion, the music drowning out her thoughts, the physical exhaustion that made emotional exhaustion feel less heavy. She was 30 minutes into her run when she noticed him. He was at the weight section, tall and broad-shouldered. His dark hair falling slightly into his eyes as he focused on his form. There was something different about him. Not just his looks, though he was definitely handsome, but the way he carried himself. Confident but not arrogant. Focused but not unapproachable. Their eyes met briefly in the mirror, and he smiled, a small, polite acknowledgement. Sylvia quickly looked away, her heart beating a little faster, and not from the cardio. "Don't even think about it," she told herself firmly. "You're here to work on yourself, not to find another man to break your heart." She finished her run and moved to the weight area, trying to ignore the fact that she'd deliberately chosen a section near where the handsome stranger was working out. Sylvia was attempting to adjust the weight on a machine when she felt someone approach. "Excuse me," a deep voice said in perfect English. "You might want to lower that weight a bit. That machine is tricky. It's easy to injure yourself if you're not used to it." She looked up to find the handsome stranger standing there, a friendly expression on his face. Up close, he was even more striking. Sharp features, kind eyes, and a presence that made her very aware of how sweaty and gross she probably looked. "Oh," Sylvia said, suddenly self-conscious. Thanks. I'm still figuring out all the equipment. New member? He asked, easily adjusting the weight for her. About 2 weeks now. Welcome then. Jinwoo. Kong Jinwoo. He extended his hand. Sylvia, she said, shaking it. His grip was firm but gentle. Sylvia Mitchell. American? He asked with a smile. That obvious. Your accent is charming, he said, and somehow it didn't sound like a line. How long have you been in Seoul? 3 years. You speak English really well. I studied at UCLA. Jinwoo explained. Business school. I spent about 6 years in the States. They talked for a few more minutes. Easy, casual conversation about the gym, about Seoul, about nothing particularly deep. But there was something comfortable about it, something that made Sylvia feel like she could breathe fully for the first time in months. Well, Jinwoo said finally, I should let you get back to your workout. But if you ever need help with any of the equipment, feel free to ask. I'm here most evenings. Thank you, Sylvia said, meaning it. He smiled again and headed back to his section of the gym. Sylvia tried to focus on her workout, but she kept catching glimpses of him in the mirrors. And a few times she caught him glancing her way too. Over the next 2 weeks, Sylvia found herself looking forward to the gym in a way that had nothing to do with fitness. Jinwoo was there almost every evening, and they'd fallen into an easy pattern of friendly conversation. He'd show her proper form on machines, share tips about getting the most out of her workouts, and they'd chat about everything from Korean food to American movies. He never asked about her personal life, never pried into why she was in Seoul or whether she was dating anyone. And Sylvia appreciated that more than she could say. What she didn't know was that Jinwoo knew exactly who she was. He'd recognized her from the viral video. He'd actually seen it when it first made the rounds. But unlike most people who'd watched it for entertainment, Jinwoo had felt genuine sympathy for the woman whose heartbreak had been broadcast to thousands of strangers. He'd also done what any successful businessman would do. His research. He knew she worked at JH Marketing International now, a company that was currently in talks with his own tech firm about a potential partnership. He knew she'd been a teacher before. He knew about the public humiliation, the betrayal, the way her so-called friends had abandoned her. And he knew what it felt like to be broken by someone you loved. 3 years ago, his fiancée had left him at the altar, literally walked away in her wedding dress, to be with his business rival. The scandal had been all over the Korean news. He'd built his company partly as a way to prove her wrong, to show that he didn't need her to be successful. He understood Sylvia's pain in a way most people couldn't. But he didn't tell her any of this. Not yet. She was clearly healing, clearly rebuilding, and he didn't want to complicate that by revealing that he knew her story. Instead, he just kept showing up, kept being friendly, and hoped that eventually she might be ready for something more. 1 month later. You're getting really good at this, Jinwoo commented as Sylvia finished a set of deadlifts with proper form. I have a good teacher, she said, slightly breathless but smiling. They'd progressed from casual gym acquaintances to something like friends. Jinwoo had started timing his workouts to match hers, and they often grabbed protein shakes together afterward at the gym's smoothie bar. Sylvia still didn't know much about him. He was private in a way that she respected. She knew he worked in tech, that he was successful, the expensive gym membership and designer workout clothes were clues, and that he was kind in a genuine way that felt rare. What she didn't know was that he was Kong Jinwoo, CEO of TechVision Korea, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in Seoul. That his face was regularly in business magazines, that he was considered one of the most eligible bachelors in Korea. She just knew him as Jinwoo, the nice guy from the gym who made her laugh and didn't make her feel broken. So, Jinwoo said as they sat at the smoothie bar, I wanted to ask you something. Sylvia's heart skipped. Okay. There's this new restaurant that opened in Itaewon. International fusion cuisine. I've been wanting to try it, but eating alone at nice restaurants is depressing. He smiled slightly. Would you want to have dinner with me? As friends, he added quickly. Just 2 people who enjoy good food and decent conversation. Sylvia hesitated. The last time someone had asked her to dinner, it had ended with her world falling apart. But Jin-woo wasn't Min-Jun. He'd been nothing but respectful, kind, and genuine. And more importantly, she'd been nothing but miserable trying to protect herself from ever getting hurt again. As friends, she confirmed. As friends, he agreed. Then yes, I'd like that. His smile lit up his entire face. Great. How about Saturday? I can pick you up. I'll meet you there, Sylvia said quickly. Baby steps. She wasn't ready to give out her address yet. Fair enough, Jin-woo said, not seeming offended. I'll text you the details. They'd exchanged numbers weeks ago for gym scheduling purposes, but this felt different. This felt like a possibility. Saturday evening. Sylvia stood outside the restaurant, her palms sweating despite the cool evening air. She'd changed her outfit 3 times, finally settling on a simple black dress that was nice but not try-hard. This wasn't a date after all. Just dinner between friends. Sylvia! She turned to see Jin-woo walking toward her, and her breath caught. He was dressed casually but elegantly in dark jeans and a crisp white button-down, and he looked. Don't, she warned herself. Don't go there. You look beautiful, he said when he reached her. Thanks. You clean up pretty well yourself. They headed inside, and the hostess led them to a quiet table by the window. The restaurant was lovely, modern but warm, with soft lighting and a view of Itaewon's bustling streets. So, Jin-woo said once they'd ordered, tell me something about yourself that I don't know. Like what? Anything. What brought you to Seoul? What do you love about it? What do you hate about it? Sylvia considered the question. The old her would have given some superficial answer about K-dramas and Korean food. But sitting across from Jin-woo, she felt like she could be honest. I came here because I wanted an adventure, she said. I was stuck in a dead-end job in Chicago, living the same day over and over. Seoul felt like a chance to be someone different. Someone braver. And did you become braver? I thought I did, Sylvia said quietly. But then some things happened that made me feel like the scared girl from Chicago all over again. Jin-woo's expression softened. You know what I think. I think the bravest thing anyone can do is keep going after they've been broken. Anyone can be brave when things are easy. There was something in his voice, a note of personal experience, that made Sylvia look at him more closely. Sounds like you're speaking from experience. Maybe I am, he said with a slight smile. We all have our stories, right? Our moments when we thought we couldn't go on, but somehow we did. They talked for hours, about Seoul, about life, about their families and dreams and the small mundane things that make up a person. Jin-woo made her laugh in a way she hadn't laughed in months. He listened when she talked, really listened, not just waiting for his turn to speak. And somewhere between the appetizers and dessert, Sylvia realized something that both terrified and thrilled her. She was starting to like him. Really like him. As they left the restaurant, Jin-woo turned to her. I had a really good time tonight. Me too, Sylvia admitted. Can I walk you to your taxi? Sure. They stood on the curb, the night air cool around them, Seoul's lights glittering like stars. Sylvia, Jin-woo said softly. I know you said friends. And that's fine. I'm happy with friends. But I want you to know. When you're ready for more, if you're ever ready for more, I'd like to take you on a real date. Not as friends. Sylvia's heart was pounding. Jin-woo. You don't have to answer now, he said quickly. Just think about it. No pressure. Taxi pulled up and Sylvia got in. But before she closed the door, she looked back at him. Ask me again in a few weeks, she said. When I've had time to think. His smile was worth everything. I will. As the taxi pulled away, Sylvia caught sight of her reflection in the window. She was smiling. Really genuinely smiling. For the first time since Valentine's Day, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she was going to be okay. Better than okay. Maybe she was going to be happy. 3 months later. Sylvia couldn't pinpoint exactly when dinner as friends had turned into something more. Maybe it was the second dinner, when Jin-woo had reached across the table to wipe a bit of sauce from her cheek, and their eyes had locked for just a moment too long. Maybe it was the third week, when they'd abandoned the pretense of meeting at the gym and started planning actual dates. Museums, art galleries, late-night walks along the Han River. Or maybe it was the moment she'd finally said yes when he asked, for the 5th time, if she was ready for this to be real. "I'm scared," she'd admitted, standing outside her apartment building after another perfect evening together. "I know," Jin-woo had said, taking her hand. "I'm scared too. But I think we could be really good together. If you're willing to try." And she had been. Terrified but willing. Now, 3 months into their relationship, Sylvia felt like she was living someone else's life. A better life, a happier life than she'd ever imagined possible after Valentine's Day. Jin-woo was everything Min-Jun hadn't been. Attentive without being possessive. Supportive without being condescending. Proud to be with her, and not afraid to show it. He'd introduced her to his friends. Successful, kind people who welcomed her warmly and never once made her feel like an outsider. They went on double dates with other couples, had game nights, lived a normal, healthy social life. But there was still one thing Jin-woo hadn't told her. Exactly what he did for a living. She knew he worked in tech. She knew he was successful. The expensive restaurants, the luxury car, the penthouse apartment in Gangnam all pointed to someone doing very well. But he'd been vague about specifics, and she hadn't pushed. Until today. Sylvia was at work, reviewing marketing materials for a new client partnership, when her boss called her into his office. "Sylvia, good news," Director Park said with a smile. "You know that tech partnership I've been working on? Tech Vision Korea. It's been finalized. They're going to be our biggest client." "That's great," Sylvia said, genuinely pleased. Landing major clients meant job security, possible bonuses, maybe even a promotion. "There's going to be a networking event next week," Director Park continued. "Very high profile. I'd like you to attend, help coordinate with their team. It'll be good experience for you." "Of course. What's the company about?" Director Park pulled up a website on his computer. Tech Vision Korea. They do AI integration for businesses, smart city technology, that kind of thing. Very cutting edge. The CEO is quite young, only 33, but he's brilliant. Built the company from the ground up after some personal setback. Very inspiring story. He turned the monitor towards Sylvia, showing her the company website. And there on the About Our CEO page was Jin-woo. Jin-woo, CEO and founder of Tech Vision Korea. Sylvia's mind went blank for a moment. Jin-woo was this. The articles on the screen detailed his education, Seoul National University, then UCLA. His company's meteoric rise. His innovations in the tech industry. There were photos of him at business conferences, accepting awards, being interviewed by major Korean news outlets. "Sylvia, are you all right?" Director Park asked. Yes, sorry. I think I've met him before. Briefly. That was an understatement. That evening, Sylvia met Jin-woo at their favorite cafe in Samcheongdong. He was already there, sitting by the window with 2 iced Americanos, and his face lit up when he saw her. "Hey, beautiful," he said, standing to kiss her cheek. "How was your day?" "Interesting," Sylvia said, sitting down. "I found out about a new client partnership at work." "Oh, anyone I'd know." "Tech Vision Korea," she said, watching his expression carefully. "You might know them. Apparently the CEO is quite impressive." Jin-woo's smile faltered slightly. Is right," Sylvia said, but she was smiling. "Were you ever going to tell me you're kind of a big deal?" "I was," he said quickly. I like being just Jin-woo with you. Not the CEO, not the guy from the news articles, just me. Sorry. I should have told you sooner." Sylvia reached across the table and took his hand. "I get it. Actually, I really get it. I like being just Sylvia with you too. Not the girl from the viral video, not the woman who got cheated on, just me." Jinwoo's eyes widened slightly. You know, I saw that video. I figured you might have. It was everywhere. I saw it the day it happened, he admitted. And I thought, that woman deserves so much better than what happened to her. I never imagined that months later, I'd be sitting across from you, completely falling for you. Sylvia's heart skipped. Falling for me. Completely, he said softly. Sylvia, I know it's only been 3 months, and I know you've been hurt. But I need you to know. This is real for me. You're real for me. It's real for me too, Sylvia whispered. They sat there, hands intertwined, and for the first time since arriving in Seoul 3 years ago, Sylvia felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. So, Jinwoo said after a moment, about this networking event. I'm assuming you'll be there representing your company. Looks like it. Good. Then I can introduce you as my girlfriend officially. If that's okay with you. Sylvia hesitated. Jinwoo. Your business reputation is strong enough to handle me dating an amazing woman, he said firmly. I'm not hiding you. I'm not ashamed of you. I want everyone to know that I'm the luckiest man in Seoul. 1 week later, the event was being held at a luxury hotel in Gangnam, one of those glittering affairs with champagne, canapes, and everyone dressed in their most expensive business attire. Sylvia had bought a new dress for the occasion, deep emerald green that complemented her skin beautifully, and for once she felt confident. She was here with Jinwoo. She had a good job. She'd rebuilt her life. She was happy. Ready? Jinwoo asked, offering his arm as they approached the ballroom entrance. Ready, Sylvia confirmed. They walked in together, and Sylvia immediately noticed people turning to look. Jinwoo was clearly well known in this crowd, and having a black woman on his arm was drawing attention. Some curious, some approving, some less so. But Jinwoo seemed completely unbothered. He introduced her to business partners, investors, executives, always with clear pride. This is my girlfriend, Sylvia Mitchell. She works in international marketing. People were polite, interested, welcoming. It was nothing like the viral video disaster. This time, people were seeing her as Jinwoo's equal, not as some dramatic foreigner causing a scene. Sylvia was talking with a group of marketing executives when she heard a familiar laugh behind her. She turned, and her blood ran cold. Min-Jun was there, standing near the bar with a group of men in suits. And beside him, looking significantly less glamorous than her Instagram suggested, was Sandra. For a moment, Sylvia couldn't breathe. She hadn't seen either of them in person since that awful night in Min-Jun's apartment. Seeing them now, in this space where she'd felt so confident just moments ago, made all the old wounds throb. But then Jinwoo's hand was on her lower back, steady and reassuring. You okay? He murmured. That's them, Sylvia whispered. My ex and her. Jinwoo followed her gaze, his expression hardening slightly. The ones from the video. Yeah. Do you want to leave? Sylvia considered it. The old Sylvia would have run, would have hidden, would have let them steal her joy once again. But she wasn't that Sylvia anymore. No, she said, lifting her chin. I'm not leaving. I have just as much right to be here as they do. That's my girl, Jinwoo said with a proud smile. As if sensing her gaze, Min-Jun looked over. His eyes widened when he saw Sylvia, then widened further when he realized who she was with. Sylvia watched the recognition dawn on his face. Jinwoo, the CEO of the company that Min-Jun's employer was partnering with. The man who, in this business ecosystem, was significantly above Min-Jun's pay grade. And he was with Sylvia. Min-Jun said something to Sandra, who turned and saw them. Her face went pale, then red, then carefully blank. For a moment, the four of them just stared at each other across the ballroom. Then Jinwoo did something that made Sylvia's heart soar. He raised his champagne glass slightly in their direction. Not a toast, just an acknowledgement, and then turned his full attention back to Sylvia, as if they weren't even worth a second thought. Come on, he said. I want to introduce you to some people. An hour later, Sylvia was actually enjoying herself. She'd successfully networked with several potential clients, had meaningful conversations about marketing strategy, and had almost forgotten that Min-Jun and Sandra were in the same room. Almost. She was refreshing her champagne at the bar when she overheard raised voices from the terrace outside. "I told you to stop embarrassing me." Min-Jun's voice, sharp and angry. "I'm not embarrassing you." Sandra's voice, defensive and hurt. "I was just talking to those women." "You were talking too much, making yourself look desperate. Do you know who some of these people are? They're executives, important people. And you're here acting like..." Sylvia knew she shouldn't listen, knew she should walk away. But something kept her rooted to the spot. "Acting like what, Min-Jun?" Sandra's voice was rising now, losing its composure. "Like you don't belong here." Min-Jun snapped. "Because you don't. The only reason you're here is because of me. That's not fair." "Nothing is fair, Sandra. Life isn't fair. You should know that by now." There was a pause, and when Sandra spoke again, her voice was shaking. "Is this about Sylvia being here? With him? This has nothing to do with her." "Liar. You've been different ever since you saw her. You can't stand that she moved on, that she's with someone successful." "Successful?" Min-Jun laughed, but it was cruel. "Is that what this is about? You think I'm jealous? I'm embarrassed. Embarrassed that I wasted 2 years on her, and now everyone knows. That video, Sandra. Do you know how many business contacts saw that? How unprofessional it made me look. You didn't seem to mind when you were using our relationship to look cosmopolitan and open-minded at work events," Sandra shot back. "That was different. You were." Min-Jun paused. "You were supposed to be an upgrade. But you're not. You're just..." "Just what?" "Not wife material," Min-Jun said coldly. "I need someone better. Someone who can actually help my career, not hurt it." The silence that followed was deafening. Are you breaking up with me?" Sandra's voice was barely a whisper now. "Here. At this event. I think it's for the best," Min-Jun said. "You can find your own way home. I have people to network with." Sylvia heard footsteps. Then Sandra appeared in the doorway from the terrace. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes red, and she looked broken. Their eyes met for just a moment. Sylvia saw recognition flash across Sandra's face, followed by shame, then something like desperation. But Sylvia didn't feel triumphant. She didn't feel vindicated. She just felt sad. Sad that this was how things ended. Sad that Min-Jun was exactly who she discovered him to be. A man who saw women as accessories to his ambitions. Sandra hurried past her, and Sylvia heard the beginning of sobs as she disappeared into the crowd. Then she heard the whispers starting. "Did you see that? Someone was recording. Oh my God, it's already on Instagram." History, it seemed, had a dark sense of irony. Sylvia returned to Jin-Woo's side, where he was discussing business strategy with a group of executives. "There you are," he said warmly, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Sylvia said. And surprisingly, she meant it. She'd just witnessed Sandra's public humiliation, the same kind Sandra had laughed about when it happened to Sylvia. But instead of feeling pleased, instead of feeling like justice had been served, Sylvia just felt free. Free from the need for revenge. Free from the anger. Free from caring what they did or what happened to them. Ready to go. Jin-Woo asked. "We can leave early if you want." Sylvia looked around the ballroom, at the successful people, the opportunities, the life she was building. "Actually," she said, "let's stay a little longer. I'm having a good time." Jin-Woo smiled and kissed her forehead. "Whatever you want." And as they rejoined the conversation, Sylvia realized something profound. The best revenge really wasn't revenge at all. It was building a life so good, so genuine, so full of real love and real happiness that the past couldn't touch it anymore. 2 months later, Sylvia stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Jin-Woo's penthouse, looking out over Seoul's glittering skyline. The city that had once felt so hostile, so full of bad memories, now looked beautiful again. It was amazing how perspective could change everything. "What are you thinking about?" Jin-woo asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "How different everything is now," Sylvia said, leaning back against him. "5 months ago I was broken. And now? Now I'm happy," she said simply. Really, genuinely happy. It was true. The past 5 months with Jin-woo had been easy. Not without challenges. They'd had disagreements, navigated the complexities of his demanding career and her own professional growth, dealt with the occasional judgment from strangers who didn't approve of their interracial relationship. But through it all they'd been partners. Real partners. Jin-woo had met her mother over video call and charmed her completely. Sylvia had spent weekends with his family, who'd welcomed her with open arms. His mother teaching her Korean recipes. His father asking her opinion on American politics. His younger sister declaring her the coolest uni ever. This was what real love looked like. Not grand gestures or social media posts or promises that evaporated when things got hard. Just showing up, being present, choosing each other every single day. "Actually," Jin-woo said, his voice slightly nervous, "I wanted to talk to you about something." Sylvia turned to face him, and her breath caught at the expression on his face. Serious, but with an underlying joy that made her heart race. "Okay. Close your eyes," he said. "Jin-woo. Trust me. Close your eyes." Sylvia closed her eyes, her heart pounding. She heard movement, heard Jin-woo take a deep breath. "Okay," he said. "Open them." She opened her eyes to find Jin-woo on one knee, a small velvet box open in his hands. Inside was the most beautiful ring she'd ever seen, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds, elegant and unique. "Sylvia," Jin-woo said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know it's only been 5 months. I know that's fast by any standard. But I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You are the strongest, kindest, most incredible woman I've ever met. You've been through hell and came out the other side more beautiful for it. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that not all men are like the one who hurt you. That love can be real and honest and lasting." Tears were already streaming down Sylvia's face. "I know Seoul has some bad memories for you," Jin-woo continued. "So I'm giving you a choice. If you say yes, we can stay here and build our life in this city. Or we can start fresh anywhere in the world. New York, London, Tokyo, Chicago. Wherever you want to go, wherever you feel most at home, that's where I want to be. Because home isn't a place anymore. It's you." Jin-woo. Sylvia could barely speak through her tears. "Sylvia Mitchell, will you marry me?" For a moment, Sylvia couldn't answer. Not because she was uncertain. She'd never been more certain of anything in her life. But because she was overwhelmed by the sheer rightness of this moment. This was what she'd thought she'd have on Valentine's Day 8 months ago. But if Min-Jun had proposed that night, she would have said yes to a lie. She would have married someone who saw her as temporary, as expendable, as less than. Jin-woo saw her as everything. "Yes," she finally managed to say. "Yes, of course, yes. And Jin-woo. Choose Seoul. This city is my home. I'm not running from it anymore. I'm not letting the past chase me away from the future I want." Jin-woo's face split into the biggest smile she'd ever seen. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, and stood, pulling her into his arms and kissing her deeply. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Sylvia whispered back. They stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the city lights twinkling below them like a promise of all the bright tomorrows to come. 3 days later, Sylvia was at her apartment, packing up some things to move into Jin-woo's place. They decided there was no point in maintaining 2 residences once they were engaged, when there was a knock at her door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Jin-woo was at a business meeting, and her few friends in Seoul always texted before coming over. Curious, Sylvia opened the door. Sandra stood in the hallway. For a moment neither woman spoke. Sylvia took in Sandra's appearance. She'd lost weight, her hair wasn't styled with its usual care, and she was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie instead of her typically fashionable outfits. But what struck Sylvia most was her eyes. They looked defeated. "Hi," Sandra said quietly. "What are you doing here?" Sylvia asked, not unkindly but firmly. "I know I have no right to be here," Sandra said quickly. "I know you probably never want to see me again. I needed to talk to you. To apologize. If you'll let me." Every instinct told Sylvia to close the door. To protect herself. To not let this woman who'd caused her so much pain back into her life. Even for a moment. But something, maybe the growth she'd experienced, maybe simple curiosity, maybe the fact that she was too happy now for Sandra to hurt her anymore, made her step aside. 5 minutes, Sylvia said. Sandra nodded gratefully and stepped inside. They stood in the living room, an awkward distance apart. Sandra looked around the apartment, at the boxes being packed, at the engagement photos Sylvia had printed and planned to frame, at the life Sylvia was building. "You're moving in with him," Sandra observed. "Yes." "He proposed." "Yes." Sandra's eyes filled with tears. "You look happy." "I am. I'm glad," Sandra said, and surprisingly, she sounded like she meant it. "You deserve to be happy. You always did. And I ruined that for you. I ruined everything." "Why are you here, Sandra?" Sylvia asked, keeping her voice neutral. "To apologize. Really apologize." Sandra took a shaky breath. "What I did to you was unforgivable. I knew it was wrong while I was doing it, and I did it anyway. I told myself it was about love, about not being able to help who I fell for, but that was a lie. Truth is, I was jealous of you." Sylvia blinked in surprise. "Jealous? Of me?" "You were always so confident," Sandra said. "So sure of yourself, even when you were new to Seoul. People liked you immediately. You made friends easily. And Min-Jun. He looked at you like you hung the moon. I wanted that. I wanted someone to look at me that way. So you took him." "So I took him," Sandra confirmed, shame coloring her voice. "And I lost my best friend in the process. I lost myself. Because Min-Jun never looked at me the way he looked at you, Sylvia. Not really. I was just newer, innier, but ultimately just as disposable." Sylvia felt a pang of sympathy despite herself. "He broke up with you at that event. You saw that. I heard it. I'm sorry." "Don't be," Sandra said bitterly. "I deserved it. Karma, right? I humiliated you, and the universe made sure I got humiliated right back." There was a pause. Then Sandra said, "There's more." "More." Sandra's hand moved to her stomach, a protective gesture that told Sylvia everything before the words came out. "I'm pregnant," Sandra said. 3 months. It's Min-Jun's." "Oh, Sandra." "He denied it," Sandra continued, her voice breaking. "Said it couldn't be his, that I must have been sleeping with other people, that he wanted nothing to do with me or the baby. He threw me out of his apartment, the apartment I'd moved into, given up my own lease for. I have no job, no money, nowhere to go. My family back home won't talk to me because I told them about the baby and they're ashamed. I'm completely alone." Sylvia should have felt vindicated. This was justice, wasn't it? Sandra was getting exactly what she deserved. Abandoned, pregnant, alone. Just like she'd helped Min-Jun abandon Sylvia. But looking at this broken woman in front of her, all Sylvia felt was pity. "Why are you telling me this?" Sylvia asked gently. "Because I don't know what else to do," Sandra whispered. "I know I don't deserve your help. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But you're the only person I know in Seoul who has any decency left. And I'm desperate." Sylvia stood there, weighing her options. She could turn Sandra away. Could tell her to figure it out on her own, the way Sylvia had been forced to figure things out after Valentine's Day. No one would blame her for that. But would that make her feel better? Would it heal anything? Or would it just make her like them, like Min-Jun and Sandra, people who used others and discarded them when they were no longer useful? "Okay," Sylvia heard herself say. Okay. I'll help you, Sylvia said. But I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me. Because I don't want your betrayal to turn me into someone bitter. Someone who sees another person suffering and walks away. That's not who I am. Sandra was crying now openly. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm not done, Sylvia said firmly. I'll help you find resources. Pregnancy support, housing assistance, job placement services. I'll help you get on your feet. But we're not friends, Sandra. We'll never be friends again. What you did broke something that can't be fixed. I can forgive you, but I can't trust you. Do you understand? I understand, Sandra said, wiping at her tears. I don't expect anything more than that. I don't deserve anything more than that. Sylvia pulled out her phone. Let me make some calls. There are organizations for pregnant women in your situation. And I know someone at an international school who's looking for administrative help. Nothing fancy, but it pays. If you're serious about getting your life together, I'll point you in the right direction. But the actual work, that's on you. Anything, Sandra said. I'll do anything. 1 month later, the engagement party was held at a beautiful venue overlooking the Han River, the same river where Sylvia had sat, broken and hopeless, just months ago. Now, surrounded by Jean Woo's family, her work colleagues, and new friends she'd made through her relationship with Jean Woo, Sylvia felt like the luckiest woman alive. Speech. Speech. Someone called out. Jean Woo stood, raising his glass. I'll keep this brief, he said with a smile. Most of you know my story. How I was left at the altar 3 years ago, how I thought I'd never trust anyone again. And then I met Sylvia. She showed me that real love isn't about grand gestures or perfect Instagram posts. It's about showing up, being honest, choosing each other, especially when things are hard. He looked down at Sylvia, his eyes soft. Sylvia, you are the strongest person I know. You took the worst moment of your life and turned it into fuel for becoming an even better version of yourself. You inspire me every day. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you. The room erupted in applause. Sylvia stood and kissed him, her heart so full she thought it might burst. Later that night, as the party wound down, Sylvia stepped outside for some air. She pulled out her phone and, on impulse, decided to do something she hadn't done in months. She reopened her Instagram account. Not to check on anyone else. Not to see what Min-Jun or Sandra were doing. But to share her own story on her own terms. She posted a photo from the engagement party. Her and Jean Woo smiling at each other, love evident in every pixel. And she wrote, 8 months ago I went viral for all the wrong reasons. I was heartbroken, humiliated, and convinced my life in Seoul was over. But here's what I learned. Your worst moment doesn't define you. How you rise from it does. Today I'm engaged to the love of my life, thriving in my career, and genuinely happy. To everyone who watched that video and felt sorry for me, thank you, but I'm okay now. Better than okay. To everyone going through their own heartbreak, it gets better. You get stronger. And one day, you'll realize that what you thought was your ending was actually just the beginning of something beautiful. She hit post and put her phone away. Within minutes, the notifications started rolling in. But Sylvia didn't check them. She didn't care about the likes or comments or who was seeing it. She went back inside to her fiancé, to her future, to the life she'd built from the ashes of her past. Somewhere across Seoul, Min-Jun scrolled through his Instagram feed mindlessly, avoiding sleep because sleep meant being alone with his thoughts. Then Sylvia's post appeared. He stared at the photo, at how radiant she looked, at the man beside her, a man he now reported to indirectly in the company hierarchy, at the ring on her finger. And for the first time since Valentine's Day, Min-Jun felt something uncomfortable twist in his chest. Regret. He'd had that. He'd had a woman who loved him genuinely, who would have built a life with him, who saw him as more than a status symbol. And he'd thrown it away for... what? For Sandra, who'd been just as shallow as he was. For social media validation that meant nothing. Min-Jun started to type a comment, then deleted it. Started to send a DM, then deleted that too. What could he possibly say? He looked around his empty apartment. Sandra's things were long gone, and he hadn't bothered replacing them with anyone new. He was 34, successful on paper, and utterly alone. Sylvia, meanwhile, was moving forward. Getting married. Building a life. Without him. Min-Jun closed the app and stared at his ceiling. But Sylvia didn't know he'd seen the post. Didn't know he was thinking about her. Didn't care. She'd moved on completely. And that, perhaps, was the most fitting ending of all. 6 months later. Sylvia stood in her wedding dress, looking at herself in the mirror. Her mother stood beside her, tears streaming down her face. "My baby girl," her mom whispered. "You look absolutely beautiful." "Thanks, Mama," Sylvia said, her own eyes getting misty. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Not just for this," she gestured at the dress at the wedding preparations happening outside, "but for everything. For surviving what you went through. For not letting it make you bitter. For choosing to love again." "I almost didn't," Sylvia admitted. "When Jin-woo first asked me out, I wanted to say no. I was so scared of getting hurt again. But you said yes anyway. That's courage, baby. Real courage." There was a knock at the door. "Sylvia. It's time." Sylvia took one last look at herself. At the woman she'd become through pain, through healing, through choosing herself and then choosing love again. She was ready. The wedding was perfect. Not Instagram perfect. It rained a little during the outdoor ceremony, and the flower girl tripped on her way down the aisle, and Jin-woo cried through his vows, which made everyone else cry too. But it was perfectly real. Perfectly them. As Sylvia and Jin-woo shared their first dance as husband and wife, she looked around the room at the people who'd supported her journey. Her mother, Jin-woo's family, her colleagues who'd become real friends, even the elderly woman from the Han River Park, who she'd tracked down and invited. This was her family now. Her community. Her home. Seoul had broken her once. But it had also given her the space to rebuild herself into someone stronger, someone better, someone who knew her own worth and wouldn't settle for less than she deserved. "What are you thinking about?" Jin-woo murmured as they swayed to the music. "That I'm happy," Sylvia said. "That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "With me?" Jin-woo asked with a playful smile. "With you," Sylvia confirmed. "Always with you." And as they kissed, surrounded by people who loved them, Sylvia felt the last piece of her broken heart finally heal. The girl who'd fallen apart on Valentine's Day was gone. In her place was a woman who knew that the best love stories aren't the ones that start perfect. They're the ones where you find your way back to yourself first, and then find someone who loves the person you've become.